Alright folks, welcome back to another video. Today I'm gonna have a little fun and look at the alternative uses for walkers in the Walking Dead universe. From the well-known guts trick, to using them as fertilizer, or even using them to get high. In other words, how many ways can you use a walker as a tool in the apocalypse? So let's comb through the universe and see how many examples we can find. If you're enjoying this type of content, be sure to hit that like button, and if you're feeling generous, drop a sub as well. Now, I'm going to keep this first topic short since I have a full video exploring most of these first few methods in depth. So if you've seen my camouflage video, I'd recommend skipping to the time on screen to get some new stuff. The scent of death is what helps walkers differentiate themselves from the living, explaining why they don't just eat each other. When a survivor finds themselves coated with the insides of a walker, they'll find the dead will ignore them, given no sudden attention is drawn. This is most often used in tight situations, as too much exposure to the dead's insides can leave the survivor extremely ill with all kinds of nasty infections. A safer alternative being pets or guard dogs. Walkers without the desire to eat as they lose the ability to do so, usually from having their jaws broken and arms cut off by survivors. The scent and docile nature of the pet both contributes to keeping the survivor safe when walking with the dead, and will even keep them protected in the wilderness when sleeping. Continuing on with using the smell of the dead to your advantage, we of course have skin suits. A skin suit is created when the flesh of a walker is cured, taking out the moisture to ensure the survivor won't become ill. This allows the survivor to blend in and walk with the dead, and in some cases, control them. But we'll get into that in a little bit. The most commonly known form of this comes from the Whisperers in The Walking Dead Season 9, donning masks, and at times, chest pieces as well. In special cases such as Beta, we see the use of skin helmets, covering half the face, but functioning the same way. Alternatively, we see in the Tales of the Walking Dead episode, Amy and Dr. Everett, the use of skin as a jacket, protecting Chauncey as he studies the dead, allowing him to get extremely close without being attacked. Now, we actually see the use of scent expanded on in The Walking Dead Season 8, as the Savior's base, known as the Sanctuary, stationed in an abandoned factory, is shown to use the dead as a deterrent, stringing them up and impaling them in mass across the fences. This would form a factory-wide camouflage to keep stray walkers away, but would also act as an intimidation tactic for any survivors wandering into their territory. A scarecrow, if you will. Speaking of scarecrows, we see walkers literally be used as them in The Walking Dead Season 9, as a tactic to try and scare away the crows from the Sanctuary's crops. Go figure. However, it appears the Scarecrow acted more as a snack than a deterrent for the crows, so the usefulness of stringing up walkers is questionable. What isn't questionable, however, is the use of walkers as scarecrows for other survivors, using taxidermic means to enhance the fear factor of the dead. In Fear the Walking Dead Season 6, a taxidermist named Ed spent the early days creating walker abominations, attaching antlers, horns, and other creepy objects to the cold bodies, and allowing them to roam the surrounding area, scaring off any plunderer daring to cross him. However, at the end of the day, they are walkers, and would one day get too close to Ed's family and eat them alive. Obviously, we know walkers are dangerous, and other survivors know that as well, making them the perfect scare tactic in the apocalypse, but also the perfect weapon. We see the weaponization of walkers on many different occasions, the most common and generic one being, of course, the use of hordes by the Whisperers, as their camouflage and body language allows them to influence the dead masses to their advantage, trampling any community or threat in their path. And in some cases, such as with the Junkyard group in Season 7, we see them take this even further with the use of weapon attachments onto walkers. Somehow I missed this walker in my variant video, but we are introduced to Winslow, an ex-scavenger who at some point lost his life, and when turned, was coated in armor and weapons by his colleagues, becoming a type of trial for the outsiders to face. Surprisingly, walkers with weapon attachments are not a common sight, despite how useful they could be in a war-type scenario. And speaking of a war-type scenario, bringing it back to the Sanctuary in Season 8, we're introduced to the concept of weapon tainting, using the boiled, rotten insides of the dead to coat your melee weapons. With this sick tactic, one small cut from a tainted blade would have the same effect as a full-on bite from a walker, infecting the survivor and eventually succumbing to wildfire, turning the victim into a walker time bomb. We see other uses of the time bomb effect in different forms, such as in Fear the Walking Dead Season 3 Episode 1, as we see a man slit the throat of an escapee and dump them into the tunnels, in the hopes of the escapee turning and tearing apart Nick and Luciana in the confined space. But the most interesting aspect of using walkers as weapons comes through the experiments of the growing French nationalist movement Pouvoir. We learn it's possible to even weaponize the dead against the dead, as a mysterious substance used to inject a walker over in France had the capability to increase the rage and strength of a walker greatly, turning it into a killing machine, even attacking other walkers. These man-made creatures are known as hybrids, and they are by far the most aggressive variant of the dead, but seem to have a failed variant of their own in the Burners. Walkers with acidic blood, capable of burning through flesh, also capable of burning through foliage and other materials, making for a dangerous, yet useful side effect of this variant. It's clear walkers can be used in various ways as weapons for survivors to take advantage of, but what are some non-threatening ways the dead can be used to benefit a society? An example of casually using the dead to your advantage is the use of pulling teams, using one or more walkers as manual labor. We see this used by Michonne in The Ones Who Live on a small scale, pulling her and Nat's cart of supplies, and in Season 9 on a larger scale, as Jed and the ex-saviors would use walkers to pull their collection of resources. It's unclear if the pulling team would have the same protective aspects for the survivor as the pet, but the implications of this tactic are, in my opinion, more interesting than the actual tactic itself. Could walkers be integrated into society one day as a means for labor? Maybe somehow produce electricity with the use of kinetic energy or something. The closest group we have to using walkers in this manner is the Barazzi in Manhattan, a group that uses the fumes of the dead trapped and rotting in the New York sewers as alternative energy, with a man named the Croat finding a way to convert the gaseous fumes from the bodies into fuel. This seems like it could be a huge plotline going into Dead City Season 2, so we'll have to wait and see the creative uses they come up with for walkers when it airs. One of the nastier uses for the dead comes as fertilizer. We only see this used in the Holding, Teddy's Doomsday Bunker scene in Fear the Walking Dead Season 6. Apparently this won't lead to the infection of the survivor and actually works really well. Still, you wouldn't catch me eating anything out of that. Obviously, the walker is a pretty diverse tool for survival, but in some cases, we see them even be used for entertainment. Of course, we have the fighting pits in Woodbury, a way for residents to blow off steam by fighting in an arena, surrounded by toothless walkers. But we also see in The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon, a man named the Conductor, string up an orchestra of walkers. It's fucking ridiculous. Even if you're not interested in that show, please just search up this scene. The last use I like to discuss is the act of using walkers to get high. In Fear the Walking Dead Season 3, we're introduced to El Bazaar, a trading outpost in Mexicali dealing in all kinds of resources and substances, including survivors dealing exotic drugs, such as the fresh walker brainstem. When harvested early enough from the head of a walker, a survivor can consume the stem containing pure adrenaline, leading to the trip of their lives. This, in my opinion, is by far the most creative alternative uses for walkers, but appears to have died out as a practice, probably just from the new Fear showrunners not knowing about it, but it is stated the stems have to be fresh, so logically it would make sense for this practice to become rare as the walkers were decaying. And those are all the alternative uses for walkers that I could find in the Walking Dead universe. This is a video I've been wanting to do for a while, but to be honest, I thought I'd be able to find a few more examples. But this is a huge franchise, and I almost guarantee there's something I might have missed. So if you think of something, please let me know about it in the comments down below. Thanks again so much for watching, folks.